Hello there, my notary besties. Welcome to your general notary work training, where I help you to become a better notary. So today's general notary work training is coming to you from your very own notary bestie, Raquel. She's a beautiful and talented notary that I got the pleasure to meet, and she's from California. She wanted me to do a video on car titles, on Ohio car titles specifically, because Ohio, we tend to be a little different, right? So I wanted to go over Ohio car titles because it confuses not only Ohio notaries, but it also confuses Ohio residents. So first and foremost, Ohio car titles, they do need to be notarized. And I know the confusion comes in because we border the Detroit area. So when you go over to Detroit titles, as of right now, they do not need to be notarized. However, if you are a Detroit resident, you live in Detroit, you stay in Detroit, but you want to purchase a vehicle from a private owner in Ohio, yes, that Ohio car title that you are purchasing, that will need to be notarized. And that's where the confusion is. So I wanted to go over this car title just in case, regardless of what state you're in, you might come across an Ohio title and you might not know how to deal with it or how to complete it. And this is what this training is for. So without further ado, let's get into it. So as a notary, first and foremost, what we need to be concerned about is how the name appears on the front of the title. So this right here, 8, that's the current title owner. So it looks like it's test owner, one test owner, and then one test owner lane and two test owner, right? So it looks like there's two owners for this particular title. That's perfect because I want to show you if you do have two people that needs to sign the title, what that will actually look like. So we need to verify with the current owner, which AKA is the seller because they are selling their vehicle. Another rule of thumb is when you are doing Ohio car titles, as long as the seller is in front of you, they are physically in front of you, or they are presented in front of you via RON, you can actually notarize their signature on a car title. Another thing is too, the buyer does not need to be present. However, if the buyer wants to be present, they can, but the seller of the vehicle needs the buyer's information because this is the information that the seller signing off on. They're signing off stating that, yes, the buyer that they're selling it to, their government name on their ID is XYZ, their address is XYZ, and I'm selling it to them for X amount, and the mileage is X amount, okay? So that's the whole premise of having the buyer's information. Sometimes the seller and the buyer may be presented in front of you, and sometimes just the seller. It really just depends. And as long as the seller has the buyer's information, that's all we need. So this is the front of the actual title. So we know that the two owners is named Test Owner 1 and Test Owner 2. They currently live at 1970 West Broad Street in Columbus, Ohio 43223. So that is the information that we are going to utilize. Another thing is too, you ask the seller, is this your current address? Because if it's not their current address, then they will need to put their current address on the back of the car title. Okay. So we already know these are the seller's name, and we already verified with the sellers that this is their current address. Okay. So let's go to the back of the title, shall we? So this is the title. This is the form with the back of the title that people get a little confused. So this area right here, number 1, it reads, is this vehicle a law enforcement vehicle, flood vehicle, or taxi? As you can see, if applicable, okay? If it's applicable, fill it out. If it's applicable, you have the seller check one of these boxes. If not, they don't check anything because it's not applicable, okay? Easy peasy. So do you remember I stated that the seller must have the buyer's information? This right here is the buyer's information. So they want the buyer's printed name and they want the buyer's printed address. So they need that information. So let's say the buyer's name is Jane Doe, okay? So Jane Doe, and you want them to print this information. And Jane Doe, she lives at 1234 Nowhere Street in Nowhere, Ohio, 43612. All right. So that's how it would have to be filled out. Okay. So this is the buyer's information. Buyers only. A lot of time notaries put the seller's name next to the buyer's information. That is an extreme no-no. That voids the title, and then they would have to get another title. Okay. So this is where the date that they're selling the vehicle. So if they're coming to you today, then of course they're going to be selling the vehicle. And as far as the date, this title was transferred on. Normally, when they come to you, that's the date that they want it to be effective, okay? We cannot forward date anything. So if they come to you today, that's the date that you will put on there. So it'll be October 18th, 2025. So you do the 2-digit month, 2-digit date, 4-digit year, and the price is going to be $300, okay? Now, once again, I told you the seller would need to have the actual mileage. So the mileage is 23,000 miles. And then over here, they will need to read it and verify if the mileage that they provided over here, if the odometer reading reflects the actual mileage, the odometer reading is in excess of the mechanical limits, the odometer reading is not the actual mileage as far as because it's a broken odometer. And then there's an odometer discrepancy, which is another form that would have to be filled out. Or it reads exempt from mileage disclosure, repossession, inheritance, whatever the case may be. So in this case, it is the actual odometer reading. So the seller would check that is the original, the actual mileage. Okay. Now, this area right here, this question is always missed because it's so small and it appears in like a conspicuous area. So is the seller a minor, yes or no? So if the seller is a minor, they would have to fill out a 3751 form, and that is a form that they can get from the BMV website, and that information will have to be filled out, and a parent will have to be present, and that's a whole nother process for a whole nother time. So if you want me to go over the 3751 form at a later date or on another video, I'll be more than welcome to do so. So now we already know there's two sellers, right? So the seller's name is one test owner, and then the other seller's name is two test owner. Okay. So what's going to happen here? This is the seller's information, seller's information only. We've already did the buyer's information. Now it's time for the seller's information. So this is the seller's information. So we're going to have the seller fill out their information. Okay. So what was the name of the seller? It's one test owner. So the first name of the first seller, and we're going to print their name. It reads print. They want it printed. Okay. So it's going to be one test owner. And then the additional seller is here, right? So it's going to be two test owner. So before the seller signed off on it, they've already filled out this information here, right? They haven't signed yet, but they printed their name. And then you're going to have them print their address here as well. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. So it's 123 Test Street, and then it's Toledo, and then their state is Ohio, and then it's 43612. So the seller has already, let's do our checks and balances. They've already filled out the buyer's information, the buyer's address, how much they're selling it for, the date, the mileage, if they're a minor, and if that's the actual mileage, and then their names. And then this is the area over here is where they're going to sign. So before they do anything else, you're going to give them their oath and affirmations. You're going to say, seller one, seller two. I'm just going to ask you 4 questions, and I need for you to verbally say yes or no, and then we can go ahead and proceed. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of law or perjury that you are the persons whose name will appear on the documents? The information that you filled out is true, fact, and correct. You are signing of your own free will, and you are signing of sound mind. Okay, they say yes, and then they can go ahead and sign it. So the thing about it is, anytime you do a car title, however their name appears on the front of the title, that's, oops, I'm sorry, right here. However their name appears in front of the title, that's how they have to print and sign on the back of the title. So on the front of the title, it read one test owner, so they would have to sign one test owner. And then the additional signer would be two test owner. All right. So once they do that information, then you go ahead and do your information. So they came to you on the 18th of October, 2025. In what county is whatever county that you're in, state of Ohio. And then you go ahead and sign, notary signature, and then you go ahead and do your commission's expiration date. And then you go ahead and put your notary stamp. And that's it. You get your money, and then you give the title to either the seller or the buyer if the buyer is present. And then the buyer will take their information. They will take the title, and then the title company will go ahead and take care of their portion. So we do not have to be concerned about the buyer's portion, okay? Because the buyer's portion, that's where you have to do the taxes, calculate the taxes and all of that. And that's actually done at the title bureau. So we don't have to be concerned about any of this, okay? We only are concerned about this top portion, and that's it. Now, the title is that simple. It's really that simple. Just some key takeaways. I want to just do a quick summary recap that some of the things that I may have gone over and some of the things that I may not have. So if there is a company, if there's a name of the company on this side, on the front side of the title, so and someone is signing on behalf of the company, they would have to print the name right here. So print the name of the company here. So ABC Company. And then they would have to put a comma. They would have to print their name, Jane Doe, and then what title they are. So fleet manager. And they will have to sign that same way over here. Okay. Another thing that I wanted to go over is, if a person has gotten married. So on the front of the title, it reads their old name of Smith and their new name is Doe. Their name is Smith, so they can print their name, Jane Smith, NKA Jane Doe. All right, so this is just stating that their previous name was Jane Smith, now NKA, now known as Jane Doe, and they would actually sign as such. And just to protect yourself, you're going to ask Jane Smith if it was due to marriage or divorce. If they have something showing that they used to be Jane Smith, that's to protect you. Okay. So if you have any questions or concerns, put them in the comments. There's so much to a card title, and this is just a brief, simple summary of it. And I will see you next week.